Welcome to the Science of CX podcast. My name is Steve Pappas, a former serial entrepreneur turned CX obsessed expert. And each week we bring you an inspiring message and insight into how customer experience can catapult your business to soar, grow, and accelerate beyond what you thought was possible. We seek out experts to interview and help you on your journey to CX in the science of CX. Well, welcome everybody to another episode of the Science of CX. I'm your host, Steve Pappas, and today we're going to have a very interesting show. We're going to learn a lot today. We've got a guest on today, and his name is Mark Smith. And Mark Smith is the president of Kitewheel, a Boston-based provider of cloud-based customer journey orchestration systems. So we're going to get into a lot of things with Mark. And as always, you guys know that we're trying to deliver a lot of different aspects of customer experience. So we're trying to bring the experts from the field, from vendors that have been around the block many times and have done various things around customer experience. It could give you insights into what you might be able to do in your business along your customer experience journey. So help me welcome Mark to the show. Welcome, Mark, today.
Thank you very much, Steve. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks very much for inviting me on.
Oh no, it's our pleasure. We've been looking forward to this. So, Mark, just for the listeners' sake, let me go through a little bit more. I mean, Kitewheel is a very, very interesting organization. So it's cloud-based. It's a customer journey orchestration hub for managing real-time customer journeys across any channel.
That's right.
Now, a little more about Mark. Prior to joining Kitewheel, he held leadership positions at Pitney Bowes Software, Portrait Software, and he was also the founder and president of a predictive analytics software firm called Quadstone. He has a PhD in mathematics and statistics from the University of Edinburgh, and we're going to get into a lot of different areas with Mark coming up here, but maybe what we should do is let Mark tell us a little more about Kitewheel, and we can start to understand more about customer journey orchestration. And I think we haven't touched this subject at this point, but I'd like you to maybe start us with what is Kitewheel and what was it founded to really solve for businesses?
Yeah, absolutely, Steve. Kitewheel's, we're primarily a technology company, and we were founded to take a somewhat different approach to solving this challenge of how businesses can best support their customers and best interact with their customers and deliver a great experience to customers every time they have an interaction with them. And you gave a little bit of my background there. I've kind of been in roughly this space for 25 years now. Started, in an analytic business that was one of the really early movers in the whole area of analyzing the behavior of customers, using their individual interactions and the things that they do to understand them. And I came over to the States about 20 years ago with that business, and through a number of other developments and that analytics getting embedded in operational systems, in call center technology with Portrait, and then in marketing technology and multi-channel technology at Pitney Bowes. What we saw was the real challenge is any business has a whole set of different systems that are involved in communicating with customers. Systems that the customers use to ask for information, and systems that the businesses use to send information to the customer. And those systems are often in silos and are disconnected. And delivering a great experience, one of the key things you need is for things to work well together so that the customer gets a consistent message and they don't hear one thing on the website and a different thing in the branch and a different thing on the phone. And so what we set Kitewheel up to do was to centralize the intelligence in one place but make it available to all those different systems so that they can work together in a smart way. And that's what we set the business up 7.5 years ago to do that. It's really hit on a theme. There's, I think, been some remarkable developments in this marketplace over the last couple of years in particular, as organizations have realized that there's this connection between the customer journey and customer experience. Delivering a great experience, if a business can really manage what it does along the theme of a customer journey, that customer visiting different channels at different times, but in the customer's mind, that's all connected. That's them living their lives, and that journey that they're on. If any business that can manage that journey as best as possible and as intelligently as possible is going to be able to deliver a great experience. And it is incredible how delivering a great experience has become so critical for so many businesses today.
That's great. Well, let's talk a little bit about trends. So you kind of alluded to the fact that things have kind of heated up in the last few years, but let's talk about the trends that you see out there, and maybe let's talk about the state of customer journeys as they are today. We'll leave out what's happened with the pandemic for a moment, but what, up till then, what have the trends looked like from your point of view?
Yeah. So, the big trend from the customer's perspective is that they've become very powerful. Customers have got easy access to lots of information through this sort of the introduction of a whole set of new channels and new, primarily digital technologies. So we all carry around our smartphones, which is in some ways, I often say it's like 10 channels in one. It's not just a phone, but it's also your web browser and your app. And it's your way of connecting to a business and a way that the business can connect to you. The thing about that device is it's always with you and it's always on. And that's been a huge turnaround in kind of the marketplace. And consumers are very demanding people. There was a really interesting stat last year from Forrester Research that says 75% of customers expect businesses to know what they're interested in before they make contact. Because we all kind of know that there's lots of data around, businesses are collecting that data, and many customers assume it's being used in a smart way to give them what they're looking for. And so expectations are really high on businesses today that they are going to use that data in a smart, intelligent way and give the customer what they're looking for and help them on their journey. And that's what's driving, I think, so much interest in experience. The flip side of that for the business is it's the key thing to compete on today. It's so difficult now to compete on product speciality or pricing differentials because information is so public and available. Customers can see through that stuff instantly. And what the customers look for now is differentiation in delivering great experiences as a reason to go with this brand over this brand, because that's what really matters to us as consumers.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that. That's an interesting stat we hadn't talked about. The 75%, of customers expect that. I guess there runs a fine line of how much of my information do you have, how much do I think you have, and then at what point in my mind do I feel you have enough to treat me better as a consumer. So I feel like a very important person. You could personalize my experience better. I know we're not at Minority Report level where we know exactly what color pants you bought last to give you the right shirt for it this time. But, because I've been involved in data for many, many years. And, we used to do the predictive analytics and next best action, whether it be in, e-commerce or contact centers. But the problem was we weren't tracking all of the data back then in the 90s. We were tracking all the transactional data and the historical data, but we weren't tracking the behavioral data. right? So maybe you call your bank and you're looking for a rate on something. Well, they might not have had that you called last week asking for mortgage rates.
That's right.
If they only had the transactional, they'll see what you've got. You've got a checking account, a savings account, and a credit card with them. But they didn't have all the behavioral, which was really the invisible information in between that wasn't tracked properly. Now, with the advent of big data as well as quality data, being able to condition it and provide hygiene on the data, we do have better access to data today. And consumers, rightfully so, are becoming much more demanding. They are, and there's nothing against consumers. It's that they're seeing that it's there, and I should be able to take advantage of it. So let's maybe talk a little bit about to make a connection of what the business needs and how journey management can really tie that in with the tech that you're talking about, and how does that really tie into a better customer experience. So maybe you could elaborate a little bit on that for our listeners.
Yeah, absolutely, Steve. And, you're absolutely right. And it starts with data. That is sort of step one of this whole process is connecting the data. And that's often what I think is the sort of step one of what Kitewheel helps with, is allowing an organization to do that identity resolution across all those different systems. That, yes, this is the same Steve Pappas that was last week asking for this rate, is today on a different channel looking for additional information. And it's piecing that together and getting a consistent profile of every individual customer is step one. Step two of journey management is really analytics, using that data to get insight into the behavior of customers. And what Kitewheel does is it does all of that in the mode of a journey. So what are the journeys that the customers are on? How are they behaving? And through time and across channel, some of them will maybe be on an acquisition journey, trying to open an account. Others will be on a loyalty journey, well late in their relationship, and they're buying more and growing their relationship. Others are on a buying journey for a very specific product. But what we do is we take that data of all those connected activities and show them in terms of the journeys that the customers are experiencing. And that allows our users to see, well, what's working and what's not. What are the customers trying to do? Where are they failing? Where are the drop-offs? And that's one of the key visuals you get from good journey analytics, is where are my customers getting stuck? And that understanding can then give the business the ability to really get in there and do something to help the customer. And that's step three, is what we call journey orchestration, where we're putting up processes in place that solve the problem for the customer, help them down their journey. By knowing what they're trying to do, we can give them prompts and guidance. We can give our own people those prompts and guidance. We can put little alerts up in the call center so that the agent can say the right thing to the customer and ask the right question. We can do that in a self-service mode on the website so that a little pop-up maybe or a chat agent will come up to guide the customer. We can put that information into a communication stream so that that's what the customer gets in their next email, is actually a set of links to the useful things to help them on the next step of that journey. And that making that final process an automated process is what helps it be a real-time experience for the customer.
So it sounds like then you're also able to, as you put all of the data together, right, and you marry that with the right analytics, you're also able to determine the journey leakage points, right, where things go bad, right? And by having, let's call them red flags, because I don't necessarily know exactly how the system does it, but red flags, you're creating early warning systems of either potential churn problems with a prospect that may not have become a customer yet, or an existing customer that may not be getting satisfied and has the propensity to churn down the road too. And So how much of that is psychology too? I mean, how much of that is understanding the individual or understanding what that persona type is and where the frustration level goes and where the problems are?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And there is, this isn't all statistics. I'm a statistician, but statistics are a tool to help, and they help business people kind of understand what might be happening. But it's never a perfect solution. Statistics gets used to uncover patterns and show trends. But you're absolutely right, Steve. It needs an understanding to go alongside that to try and figure out the why. One great way of doing that is to incorporate voice of customer feedback data into the mix. And I think what we see often is there are firms that are sort of overly focused on one or the other and don't kind of use all sides and all information to get the right solution. You get a lot of information from seeing the real behavior of customers, but merging that with asking for their feedback and will help. But also an acceptance of you're not going to get everything perfectly right. You have to make some judgments on what you think is happening and try and help the customer, but then be learning all the time, be watching what really happens, getting that feedback, getting the metrics back. So okay, we think people are getting stuck here. Maybe a little nudge reminder via a text message would help get them to the next step. Well, let's try it. Let's run it for a few days. And does it help move those customers on? If it doesn't, maybe we try something else. I actually just came off a call this morning with one of our clients in an area very similar to the one you just mentioned in terms of churn, where we've been working with them for a couple of years, and they have a whole set of different triggers that can basically be used to identify customers who look like they're thinking of leaving and switching to a competitor, from whether they're searching for certain keywords on the website, they're looking at the contract terms, they're doing an FAQ for termination conditions, they're all sorts of kind of obvious triggers. We're linking that also, though, with they have internal models that are predictive propensity models that say which customers are the most likely to fit the profile of a churner. And all of these things kind of combined together. When we see one of those individuals active on a channel, we give that our customer has the ability to kind of act and do something. And that's a series of different things. You maybe initially, let's pop up a chat. If they're online, let's pop up a chat and see if we can help them. Are they looking for a better deal? What's going on? Of course, 90% of chats don't get interacted with. So maybe there's a follow-up phone call, follow-up email. And it's that, how do we help that customer? They're searching for a better deal, maybe. They're in the mode of thinking about going to competitor. This is where real time is so important, that being alert to the behavior of the customer and being able to kind of intercept and engage them at the right time is so critical, because leaving it till next week, it's probably going to be too late. They probably made the decision and they're off with one of your competitors.
Perfect. Well, I'm being told I've got to take a quick break here. So we're going to have a word from our sponsor, and we'll be back with Mark.
Panviva has 25 years of empowering customer service, and we have deep expertise in how people actually use information from our roots in learning and performance. We offer accurate, consistent information on demand to every channel. Most relevant knowledge at your people's exact moment of need. Integrated, streamlined internal processes. Systems that deliver memorable and remarkable customer experiences that boost customer attention and loyalty every time. And knowledge that extends across your entire digital landscape. To learn more, visit Panviva at www.panviva.com.
And we're back talking with Mark Smith, the president of Kitewheel in Boston. Mark, this has been a fascinating conversation, and I've got a lot of questions for you, but I want to be conscious of time too. The interesting thing that I find, and you've been in the customer experience business in general for a long time, and what I'm encouraged by is that what you guys do is you help companies get better, right? You help companies really get better at taking care of their customers. So you're helping your customers take care of their customers. And the interesting part is it really takes an introspective or a critical company that they have to be critical of their own selves, their own company, their own organization, their own processes, everything that operates there. And it seems like there is a trend of more of this that's been happening in the last few years. So I'm wondering why companies now how are they waking up? Is it because the competitors are waking up and doing it? Are they seeing that there are companies out there that are doing it right and they're just absolutely the consumer's choices? But why are companies focusing more on CX in general? And then let's talk about why the smart companies that are doing it,
Yeah.
we'll talk a little bit later about the digital experience too. So maybe chat about that a little.
Yeah. Well, lots to cover there. There's, in terms of the big picture of experience, there's a handful of businesses do that well. Again, talking about statistics from Forrester, their CX index that they publish each year shows that in the US across all industries, there's about 1% of companies that are regarded by their customers as providing an excellent experience. 1%. And it's actually getting worse. It's actually worse in 2019 than it was in 2018, right? Just by, 0.1% or so. So who are the 1%? That's the thing. And the 1% are kind of spoiling it for everybody else. The 1% are actually businesses that have often a big advantage of being new and fully digital. So everything's electronic right from the start. And so everything's connected right from the start, and they're able to have it all in an app and it all just works. The way that your calendar on your phone now seems to know what would be an ideal location for your next meeting, and it alerts you to it. The way if you connect your phone in your car, it seems to know where you're going because it's looking it up from somewhere. It automatically gives you the directions. Those kind of things. That's what everyone else is competing with. And of course, all the rest, the majority of companies have been around for a long, long time. And they have systems that have grown up in the old days when they didn't have to be connected. And that's where Kitewheel comes in. That's our whole goal, is to help those companies with 20 different disconnected systems that are all great at doing what they do. The website runs great. The call center runs great. The email system runs great. But who's going to connect them together and make them work in harmony? And you need something else that's centralized. And of course, each of those different tools they'll tell you they'd like to do it all for you, but they don't run it all. They run their bit. And we saw this opportunity, this gap in the market for something that sits in the middle and helps the tools run well together. And that's what's happening, I think, in the main market is the 99% have realized what the 1% are doing to deliver a great experience, and they're all racing to catch up. And what's really been interesting for us in the last few months is the way those organizations that see this as about helping the customer, not helping themselves, are kind of racing ahead. Marketing has been cut. There's a whole side to the customer journey area. There are really marketing tools that are just about sending lots of messages out, right. But it's kind of trendy to call it a journey. The ones that are focused on a two-way thing with the customer and about helping and understanding the customer, they're the ones that are really in the CX world. They're the ones seeing growth right now. The CX market's up 20% while marketing's down 40%. It's a very interesting time.
So if I kind of translate that a little bit, and I've been dealing with companies of all sizes for 35 years now. I would say that in those disparate organizations where you have the AS400 still running something and the mainframe running something, and you've got all of the various systems, the one thing that may be preventing them from getting to the level, of a more elite CX type of organization is the thing that always drags companies down is silos and ownership.
Yep.
I own this. I'm not giving it up. I want to keep owning it. And I've got a silo of information that you're not going to get.
Yeah, absolutely right. Absolutely right. And that there's, again, the technology can solve a lot of these problems. But if the organization and the organizational structure doesn't also try and solve that problem, it's going to fail. And so this is a great opportunity for a fantastic opportunity time for CX professionals, because this is the time that they should be stepping up and up in the organization, because they're the ones that can umbrella across sales, marketing, service, and say, hey, it's all about the experience. And for too long, if you think about CX professionals 10 years ago, it was all about surveys and problem solving. And all of a sudden, CX has become the number one differentiator for brands. It's become part of the core brand message in lots of businesses. We're seeing heads of CX being C-level executives at organizations, not way down, many levels down in an organization. It's a very exciting time to be in the customer experience market.
Yeah, so I think it's a wake up call time for a lot of. We have a lot of board members that listen to the show. We have a lot of CEOs, COOs, et cetera. Whether you're just a shareholder, I think it's time that you demand that organizations have to pull these things together, and they have to obliterate the feeling of silos and ownership, because the culture has to start from the top, and it has to permeate through an organization that says, okay, we are going to take better care of our customer because we want to keep them for the long term, and we want their kids and their friends and relatives to be part of our organization. So maybe we take it down a level into the journey itself, and let's talk about where customers get stuck in journeys. How do you figure out exactly where the customers are getting stuck in the journey? And we started talking about it earlier, but maybe just so we could get to the nuts and bolts of this, and our listeners can have some tangible things to start thinking about, because I can imagine people sit back, they listen to the show, and it's like a mini MBA in customer experience. We touch on so many different areas, but they must sit back, and some will say, I just don't have control of all of that. Right. Where do I, what can I start to do? How can I recognize where my customers get stuck and the path may end for them at that point?
Yeah. Well, this is the point, Steve, where I wish I had a visual display and I could kind of start up the software and show you, because that's one of our key visuals. We in the analytic part of Kitewheel, we visualize the journey, all of the journeys. And one of the key parts of that visualization is the stall rate or the drop off. And you mentioned earlier a red flag. It almost literally is kind of like a red flag, where you can see those points of drop off between all the different steps in a journey. And so you can see the flows of customers down different routes from one channel to another. And we make it very visually clear where the drop off is. And so you can see at each of those points. And now we measure that simply by measuring the change in behavior and the fact that a customer gets to a certain point, does this step of the journey, but then never takes the next step. And so they're stuck and they're stalled. And it's really about that visual way of seeing that in the hands of a business strategist or an analyst, gives them the spark and the idea to drill into that and try and uncover why and at what point the customers are getting held up. And that's maybe where they pull in some VOC data from some surveys. But we're giving them that view of the real behavior of the customer and where they stop as they go down the journey.
Interesting. I think back during the pandemic, I was trying to learn more things. I'm always learning, but I was trying to learn more. And I've played guitar for about 45 years, but I always wanted to learn flamenco guitar.
Wow.
Thought it was always too hard. Well, it is hard. So I started doing some online Zoom classes.
Right.
And realized fairly quickly that my right hand, which normally has a guitar pick in it, my right hand does not contort the way it needs to actually be able to strum flamenco strumming. Right. That you lift up with your thumb, down with your forefinger, down with your ring finger, and back and forth, so that it's so fast that you can't even see your hand. Right. So I took a few of those classes, and I got so frustrated with my own inability, I stopped. Right. I stopped going. Now, if they had some software, I know this is a very simplistic thing, but if they had some software that could have seen that, maybe they could have reached out and said, we noticed that you're having a hard time with the strumming. Here are some exercises just to learn the strumming pattern.
Steve, you're exactly right. Yeah. If they could have seen that and been watching that and realized the point that you'd got stuck was this typical point. And maybe they've got that from feedback, or they know it from their own experience. But yeah, that's it. So what do you need to get to that next point? You need some manipulation exercises to, get your hand moving differently.
Right.
Well, here's a link to a different kind of video that could help you with that.
Exactly.
That's exactly right.
So I guess maybe we should talk a little bit about real time, because it seems like in organizations, everything is moving at real time speed or near real time speed. And to be able to prevent the customer from going bad at points, you need real time feedback. So can we talk a little bit about, you started earlier, about why real time is important?
I was going to say, I feel like I've been talking about real time all the way through, because no, we live in a real time world. It's just amazing. We've got no patience anymore. We expect immediate answers. We can't wait on the phone. We get frustrated when things just don't automatically happen. And we've been spoiled. Again, we've been spoiled by a small group of companies that do a great job of this and are fully connected. And so, I think there's a lot of expectation in customers that they can get, they should get immediate answers, right? There are a whole set of cases where the real-time thing is absolutely critical for the use case. If you want to do web engagement, the moment that customer's on the website, you've got to do it now. If you've not got a real-time tracker on your website, but you're just collecting analytic data that you look at next week, that's fine for some historic sort of analytic views, but it's no good if you want to capture that engagement with the customer there and then. Call center, exactly the same. The difference between giving the right info to that customer when they're on the phone talking to you, and not having to try and call them back an hour later when you've worked out what they wanted, is a huge thing. And it actually improves the experience for the customer as well, right? And I always think there's a double win. There's a win-win in here for customers, that if you can give the customer the answer the first time and help them the first time, that's going to cost you less money to serve, because they're not going to come back and use a different channel. But it's also way better for the customer. They're going to be much happier and think this is a great experience. So there's a great connection there that, as well as saving money, great CX will make the customer happier as well. It doesn't all have to be about reducing wait times or reducing costs by reducing staffing that increases wait times, makes it worse for the customer. There are ways that these things can make it better for both sides by smart use of technology.
Exactly. Well, maybe you could give some hints or some tips to our listeners as to what can they do after listening to this episode. I would imagine some folks go back and get with their team, whether it's on Zoom or something else, and they need to start thinking about things. And where do they begin? What can they start taking those first short steps towards this, even before they might call you in to start tying things together?
Yep. So customer centricity, is the organization really focused on the customer, or is the whole setup about, operations and profits, right? Has the organization, has it clicked that they exist because the customer's there and the customer buys things and buys services? And do they want to be customer centric? You made a great point earlier, Steve, about getting it high in the organization, so that there's top level leadership for change. And as long as you've got those things going, then the next step is probably to start thinking about journeys, start thinking about what journeys are underway with the customer. And lots of organizations have actually done that and have been doing that maybe for 15 years in terms of the old classic journey mapping sort of process. Theoretically, what might the customer be doing, thinking as they go through that journey. And we meet organizations all the time who've done that over and over again in all sorts of different areas. They're typically very frustrated that work never really led to anything. It never led to real action. It was an internal education type activity, right. A little bit theoretical, but no one ever took any action on it. And that's where technology like Kitewheels, journey technology, helps add to a journey map and bring it to life and make it a living, automated thing, where these journeys are real things that you can see, visualize, and automate, so that all that massive multi-million-dollar investment you've got in channels starts to do the right thing for the customer along the journey map that you've built out.
Perfect. Well, on that, let's let our listeners know how they can get in touch with you. If you'd like to get in touch with Mark, you can contact him via email at msmith@kitewheel, kitewheel.com, kitewheel.com. But even more importantly, if you go to their website, if you go to kitewheel.com, I encourage you to sign up for one of their upcoming webinars. That's probably right at the top banner of their website. But also, you can download a free Forrester report on journey orchestration. And I think that will give you a little more of the backstory of how orchestration could help your organization these days. So I want to thank you, Mark, for joining us today. This has been quite interesting and enlightening for me, and it's always great to talk to a fellow CX practitioner out there that gets it and understands it. And I hope you'll come back and maybe even consider, we will be doing live streams in September and October. We'll be doing panels. And we'll be tackling a lot of issues around CX, but those will actually be visual, not just podcasts. So maybe you'll consider coming back to us.
I'd love to, Steve. This has been a great conversation. Thank you.
So thank you again, Mark, and take care. Everyone, it's been another episode of the You've been listening to The Science of CX. My name is Steve Pappas. I really hope you've enjoyed this episode. And if you have, the highest compliment that you can give us is to subscribe, rate, and review The Science of CX. Thanks, and we'll see you in the next episode.